The late summer sun blazed overhead as Brad gunned the throttle of his bright yellow jet ski, sending them launching across the sparkling turquoise waters off Galveston's West Beach. His wife Tricia clung tightly to his waist as they crested over the boat's wakes and swells, howling with exhilaration at every airborne jump. They had dropped the kids off with grandparents for the weekend to celebrate Brad's 35th birthday, with some jet skiing in the open waters around the Galveston Island State Park. Few other watercraft dotted the vast expanse as they raced parallel to the distant shoreline, feeling completely liberated amid the endless ocean. After nearly an hour of full-throttle adrenaline riding, Brad gradually slowed their pace to an idling crawl, allowing them to catch their breath from the windy rushes. Tricia playfully splashed water from behind before planting a salty kiss on the back of Brad's neck and nuzzling against his slick skin. The roar of the jet ski engine echoed over the vast expanse of the Gulf as they sped through the open waters. Her voice cut through the noise, carrying excitement as she remarked on the solitude they enjoyed that day. With a pause in the journey, she suggested a break, a chance to immerse themselves in the refreshing waters and escape the heat of the day. Brad didn't need to be asked twice. He killed the engine as they rolled to a gentle bobbing stop atop the mild swells, with nothing but vast seascapes extending out in every direction, miles from any other signs of life. Tricia slipped off the jet ski first, gripping the attached rear security line as she allowed the weightless freedom of treading water to alleviate her aching muscles. Brad quickly followed suit, dropping backward into the refreshing bath with an invigorating yelp. Bobbing contently beside the anchored jet ski, the couple enjoyed the silence and serenity of the open waters for nearly half an hour, laughing and splashing like kids again. But their tranquil float wouldn't last. With no warning, a concussive blow slammed against the underside of the jet ski, sending it lurching upwards. Tricia instinctively grabbed the security line to brace herself while Brad was forcibly launched a few feet away with a grunt. Tricia yelled out in confusion as she steadied herself against the rocking. She asked Brad if they hit something, but before Brad could respond, his eyes came into horrifying contact with the massive pale silhouette emerging directly toward them from below. Like a massive guided missile calibrated for its mark, a 10-foot-long bull shark powered itself vertically out of the depths, its gaping serrated jaws unhinged and inhaling gallons of water with every yard it propelled upwards. Brad could only manage a feeble curse under his breath before the shark's impact. The rushing shark's entire bulk slammed into Brad at full speed, its cavernous jaws clamping down across the lower half of his body with terrifying force. In one pulverizing instant, Tricia's mind was blitzed by the concussive eruption of thrashing water and crimson spray as the rampaging shark violently engulfed her husband's figure. His agonized howls barely registered over her own shrill cries of terror. Sickening crunch after crunch resounded in sputtering bursts as the bull shark's thrashing ripped deeper into Brad's abdomen and obliterated his pelvis with horrific ease. His nerve endings were seared from the trauma until the white-hot sensations of searing muscle and crushed bones abruptly flatlined into a dull, pure shock. What followed was straight out of Tricia's most horrific nightmares as the rogue shark continued shaking its head back and forth, further separating flesh from bone and tendon. With each emphatic whiplash, bits and pieces of Brad's dismembered body spiraled away in tattered streamers across the blood-soaked waters. Within chilling moments, Tricia was left watching helplessly as her husband's obliterated remains were scattered to the hungry ocean currents. As swiftly as the fevered ambush occurred, the bull shark vanished back into the depths with one final defiant swish of its thick tail. 5 hours had passed before Galveston authorities first suspected anything out of the ordinary had transpired near Galveston Island State Park. That's when Brad's drifting disabled jet ski was finally spotted by an offshore fishing trawler, with zero trace of the owners on board. An intensive recovery and investigation followed, but ultimately, only scraps of chewed clothing and shredded personal effects were all that remained of Brad and his ill-fated birthday celebration weekend away. The downright surgical nature of the dissections told the gruesome story of a savage bull shark massacre in the remote waters. It was then that the authorities saw Tricia floating helplessly and distraught on her jet ski. She was immediately rescued by the authorities and brought aboard their ship. She didn't say a word nor talk to anyone as they sped towards the shore. Such incidents tend to incite knee-jerk public outcry and hysteria. But Brad's widow, Tricia, was determined his tragedy would prompt real solutions rather than overcorrections. She bravely channeled her grief into activism, lobbying local Gulf Coast communities to implement new safety guidelines for offshore recreation. Thanks to Tricia's tireless efforts, permanent marker buoys were established along designated corridors for jet skis, watercraft, and small vessels to operate safely apart from migratory shark feeding zones. She also facilitated updated guide maps highlighting potential hazard areas for specific times of year when bull shark activity was known to peak. While nothing could undo her family's unimaginable loss, Tricia took solace in knowing Brad's death was awakening revamped education around ocean conservation and shark safety for years to come. Rather than seek retaliation against the apex predators simply exhibiting their instinctual behaviors, the more prudent path involved coexistence with reasonable precautions in place. In the azure waters off the coast of Australia, a lone jet skier ventured into the open ocean, seeking adventure and adrenaline. It was a sunny afternoon in late November 2013 when Mark Jamieson decided to take his brand new jet ski out for a solitary spin off the shores of Perth. The adrenaline junkie had been eagerly anticipating this day for weeks, practically vibrating with excitement to test the limits of the powerful machine's capabilities on the open waters. Perth, the sun-drenched capital of Western Australia, was renowned for its pristine beaches and world-class surf breaks. The city's coastline stretched for miles, with crystal-clear waters that beckoned adventure seekers from around the globe. For Mark, who had recently turned 25, it was the perfect playground to indulge his thirst for thrills. As he secured the jet ski onto the trailer and hitched to his truck, Mark couldn't help but feel a buzz of anticipation. This wasn't his first rodeo for extreme water sports. He had been wakeboarding and skateboarding since his teens, but there was something about the raw, unbridled power of the jet ski that filled him with a childlike giddiness. The drive to Cottesloe Beach, a popular spot for water sports enthusiasts, felt like an eternity. Mark's fingers drummed impatiently against the steering wheel as he navigated the familiar streets. When he pulled into the buzzing parking lot, the sun was high overhead, casting a warm glow over the scene of families setting up for beach days and surfers waxing their boards. Mark wasted no time in unloading and prepping his jet ski. With a few deft motions, the vessel was freed from its trailer restraints and ready to be lowered into the welcoming embrace of the gentle surf. The powerful engine roared to life, sending a spray of salt water into the air and eliciting a few curious glances from nearby beachgoers. Without hesitation, Mark hopped aboard, his heart thundering with exhilaration. A wide grin split his tanned face as he twisted the throttle, and the jet ski surged forward, cutting through the waves with remarkable ease. He let out a whoop of pure joy, the salty air whipping against his face as he carved through the water. Mark stayed close to shore for a few minutes, getting a feel for the jet ski's responsiveness and power as he navigated the crowded nearshore waters teeming with swimmers and fellow thrill-seekers. But it wasn't long before the open ocean started calling to him, that vast, glittering expanse of blue that promised unlimited freedom and adventure. Unbeknownst to Mark, his antics had not gone unnoticed by a different kind of predator, lurking beneath the waves. A massive great white shark, drawn by the jet ski's engine vibrations, began tracking his movements with a hunter's precision. Its cold, black eyes locked onto the solitary human, identifying him as potential prey. But Mark was oblivious to the danger, lost in the euphoria of speed and adrenaline. With a mischievous grin, he pointed the jet ski's nose toward the open ocean and gunned the engine. The powerful vessel leaped forward, rapidly distancing Mark and the shoreline. Perth's beaches and high-rise buildings soon became mere specks on the horizon as he ventured farther and farther out to sea, chasing the limitless azure expanse. Mark felt utterly free, with water surrounding him in every direction. He executed daring maneuvers, sharp turns, and launched the jet ski into the air, only to come crashing back down onto the water's surface with a thunderous splash that sent spray flying. It was during one of these airborne stunts that disaster struck. As the jet ski reached the apex of its arc, the unmistakable shape of the great white shark breached the surface, its massive jaws agape and its cold black eyes fixated on Mark. Time seemed to slow as the shark, moving with a sudden burst of speed, collided with the jet ski in midair, its mighty jaws clamping down on the vessel's hull with a sickening crunch. The impact was catastrophic, the force sending Mark flying off the jet ski. He hit the water with bone-jarring force. The air explosively forced from his lungs as he was briefly enveloped in a world of churning foam and darkness, his senses overwhelmed by the violent collision. When Mark finally surfaced, gulping in precious lungfuls of air, his mind was a whirl of confusion and panic. Where was the jet ski, and what the hell had just happened? It was only when his gaze fell upon the mangled wreckage rapidly sinking below the waves that the terrifying reality hit him. He was stranded miles from shore with a threat he could scarcely comprehend lurking just beneath the surface. As if on cue, the massive form of the great white shark materialized beside the sinking jet ski, its substantial dorsal fin slicing through the water with lethal grace. Mark felt his blood run cold as its pale underbelly became visible, the great predator circling him with a slow, metronomic rhythm. The shark seemed to sense his fear, its predatory instincts kicking into high gear. It turned towards Mark, using its powerful tail to propel itself forward with terrifying speed. Though he kicked furiously, frantically trying to distance himself from the rapidly approaching threat, it was no use. The shark was closing in, its cavernous maw opening wide to reveal a row of serrated teeth. In that heart-stopping moment, every muscle in Mark's body burned with the fire of sheer desperation, as a primal will to survive took over. Just as the shark returned to strike, he flung his arm out in a wild defensive swipe, catching the side of its head with a glancing blow. The strike didn't do much damage, but was enough to startle and disorient the predator for a few vital seconds. Mark didn't waste a moment. He turned and began swimming with every ounce of strength he could muster, his powerful strokes propelling him through the water as he fled from the injured, enraged beast behind him. Already he could hear the sounds of its powerful tail thrashing, churning the water into a froth as it gave chase. His heart thundered in his ears, lungs burning from the exertion of his desperate flight. Try as he might to put as much distance between himself and the shark as possible, it seemed an impossible task. Its speed and tenacity were unrelenting, but Mark refused to give in to the creeping tendrils of despair. He was young, strong, and in the prime of his life. If anyone could outswim this nightmare, it was him. He swam relentlessly, his muscles burning with exhaustion, each breath searing through his lungs as if filled with molten lead. Only when he dared to glance backward did he fully grasp the magnitude of his danger. No more than 20 yards behind, the great white shark's unmistakable dorsal fin sliced through the water, its massive jaws gaping as it readied itself to surge forward and attack. A scream tore from Mark's throat, a primal sound of anguish and sheer horror. This was it. He could feel it in his bones. After outrunning the shark for so long, his luck finally ran out. He thrashed wildly in the water, blood pounding in his ears, mind consumed by blind panic as the shark closed the distance with terrifying speed. Then, just as the nightmare creature drew within striking range, jaws agape to secure its kill, a series of ear-splitting cracks rang out across the open water. Mark flinched, instinctively covering his head with his arms as something large and heavy passed before him, creating a towering wall of white water. He could scarcely believe what he saw when he opened his eyes, blinking away the stinging salt water. There, floating only a dozen yards away, was a large fishing boat, and sprawled out on its deck were two burly crewmen, smoke still wafting from the barrels of their rifles. One of them shouted to him to hang tight, already rushing to drop a life ring and safety ladder over the side of the boat. With a burst of adrenaline fueled by sheer relief, Mark propelled himself toward the rescuers. They quickly pulled him aboard, where he arrived coughing and sputtering but alive. The crew led him into the cramped cabin and wrapped him in warm blankets. Mark recounted his harrowing ordeal with the great white shark as they bombarded him with questions. He described how it had ambushed him and pursued him relentlessly for hours, a tale of survival that left everyone in awe. The crew members listened in grim silence as Mark recounted his ordeal, their weathered faces etched with awe and concern. Once he had finished, the captain wasted no time radioing for assistance and medical evacuation. Within the hour, the distant thump of helicopter rotors could be heard cutting through the salt-tinged air. As the rescue chopper drew near, lowering a harness to winch Mark aboard, he couldn't help but steal one last glance back toward the spot where the shark had vanished beneath the waves. A full-body shudder ran through him, thinking of how close he had come to becoming that legendary predator's next meal. By sheer luck and the bravery of those crewmen, he had been given a second chance at life. As the chopper banked over the glittering ocean, Mark silently vowed that this harrowing experience would serve as a wake-up call. No longer would he take unnecessary risks just for a cheap thrill. The ocean's fury, though awe-inspiring, demanded the utmost respect and humility from those who dared to venture into its domain. He would carry the physical and emotional scars of this day for the rest of his life, as a permanent reminder. The turquoise waters surrounding the Virgin Islands shimmered as the sun peaked midday. On board a tiny but sturdy sailboat, Zara and Ben were the picture of young love. They embarked on this sailing trip on July 25, 2007, to celebrate their second anniversary. Both avid adventurers planned a week-long exploration of the hidden coves and secluded beaches that dotted the Caribbean archipelago. Zara, a passionate marine conservationist on a break from her studies, was especially eager for glimpses of the vibrant marine life this region was known for. Ben, a photographer with a keen eye and a slightly goofy spirit, was her perfect complement. His love for Zara was as boundless as the ocean they sailed upon. While she possessed a quiet intensity, he brought lightheartedness and laughter to their shared journey. Their days had been filled with swimming in hidden coves, hiking lush island trails, and stargazing on deck, lulled by the rhythm of the waves. It seemed like paradise. Their bond has deepened out here, away from the rush of their city lives. Ben loved watching Zara as she scanned the horizon with excitement, her dark curls whipping in the sea breeze. Zara adored his endless curiosity and his attempts to capture the perfect shot of a dolphin leaping through the waves. Today, they were promised to be just as idyllic, a day trip to a small island further north known for its coral reefs before circling back to their home base that evening. They'd set off early, a picnic basket packed with fresh fruit and sandwiches, laughter filling the air as they charted their route. Zara reveled in the feeling of the wind in the sails, Ben steering with quiet confidence. They'd seen the telltale clouds in the distance, but these Caribbean squalls often blew over as quickly as they appeared. The storm hit with shocking speed. The wind whipped the sea into a churning froth, tearing at the sails. The once steady boat pitched violently. Clinging to the railing, Zara felt a knot of fear twist in her gut. Ben wrestled with the wheel, his face etched with concentration. But nature's fury was relentless. A colossal wave smashed into the side of the boat. The force of the impact ripped the mast clean off, sending it crashing into the water like a felled tree. Zara was thrown overboard, her cries swallowed by the storm's roar. Ben, in a desperate lunge, managed to grab her hand, but the surging sea was too mighty, their grip too weak. As Zara plunged into the swirling darkness below, her last sight was Ben's horror-stricken face. Disoriented and choking, Zara thrashed her way back to the surface. The storm still raged, the rain stinging her eyes. In the chaos of churning waves, she spotted a sliver of wood, the shattered remains of their boat. Gasping for air, she managed to haul herself onto the splintered debris. A wave slammed into her, almost washing her off again. Her muscles screamed in protest, but fear fueled her desperate attempts to stay afloat. Ben surfaced nearby, frantically searching for any sign of Zara. Relief washed over him as he saw her gripping the piece of wreckage. With a surge of strength, he swam against the angry sea, reaching her side. They clung to each other, a lifeline of human touch amidst the vast, lonely ocean. As the storm gradually subsided, the horrifying reality of their situation settled in. Their boat was gone, land was nowhere in sight, and they were adrift in waters that were teeming with sharks. Despite her conservationist knowledge, Zara had never confronted the stark power of these predators up close. Now the fear was primal, a gnawing dread chilling her far more than the ocean spray. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Within hours, their throats were parched and their skin burned. A small waterproof container bobbed nearby, the remnants of their picnic supplies. Zara fished it out, revealing a few waterlogged crackers and a bruised apple. They rationed the meager sustenance carefully, knowing it might have to last them days. The night had descended, bringing a fresh wave of terror. They could sense movement in the depths below, shadows circling ominously beneath the wreckage. At first it was subtle bumps and nudges, unsettling but survivable. Then a shark lunged, its teeth tearing into their makeshift raft. They scrambled back as the predator thrashed, tearing off chunks of wood that narrowed their already precarious haven. The next day he brought relentless heat and circling sharks. Ben tried creating a crude spear from a broken oar and a piece of metal, but the sharks were cunning, staying outside his desperate jabs. His frustration grew with each missed attack. Zara fought back tears. Her conservationist's heart rebelled at the cruelty of their situation, the stark reality of the ocean's food chain. Dehydration set in, bringing hallucinations and despair, and time lost all meaning. With every passing hour, their hopes of rescue dwindled. Yet their will to survive, fueled by desperate love for each other, flickered stubbornly. Zara found herself drawing strength from Ben's quiet determination. He, in turn, was inspired by Zara's unwavering belief that they would endure. On the third night, a faint light appeared on the horizon. It was a cargo ship, veered off course, now alerted to the chance of survivors following the storm. It felt like a miracle. They summoned their dwindling energy, waving frantically. But the ship kept its trajectory. Despair threatened to drown them. Then Zara remembered the waterproof flares they kept in the now sunken boat. Dividing their last sips of precious water, she forced herself to dive under the debris, desperately searching the boat's overturned shell. She resurfaced minutes later, clutching the flare canister. Igniting the flare, it sputtered and sparked, spewing scarlet light across the darkening sky. The change in the ship's course was almost immediate. Searchlights swept the water, homing in on the tiny spark of hope. Their ordeal wasn't over, but as rough hands dragged them on board, a wave of relief washed over them. Against all odds, they had survived. They had stared into the abyss of the ocean's indifference, felt the breath of predators, and defied death itself. They would never again look at the sea or each other with the same eyes. The incident that changed Daniel's life forever occurred 5 years ago, etching itself into his memory like a scar that refused to fade. Every detail was seared into his mind, from the golden rays of the sun reflecting off the tranquil waters of the ocean, to the deafening roar of the great white shark as it attacked his beloved brother, Mark. Daniel and Mark had a special bond forged through years of shared experiences and cherished memories. Their weekend visits to the beach had become a cherished ritual, a time for them to escape the pressures of everyday life and reconnect with nature. Ever the adventurous spirit, Mark had always been drawn to the ocean, while Daniel had accompanied him on countless underwater excursions. Together, they would frolic in the waves, laughing and joking as they explored the underwater world beneath the surface. But on that fateful day, their idyllic outing took a tragic turn when Mark was attacked by a great white shark while spearfishing. In a heartbeat, the ferocious predator shattered the peaceful tranquility of the ocean, its razor-sharp teeth tearing through Mark's flesh with savage intent. In a desperate bid to save his brother, Daniel sprang into action, drawing upon his knowledge of the ocean and its dangers to fend off the shark and drag Mark to safety. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, he fought tooth and nail to keep the predator at bay, his every instinct screaming for him to protect his brother at all costs. Finally, with a Herculean effort, Daniel managed to drag Mark up onto the rocks of the headland, where bystanders, an off-duty doctor, and a nurse rushed to his aid. For nearly an hour they worked tirelessly to revive Mark, applying first aid and performing CPR in a desperate bid to save his life. But despite their best efforts, it was not enough. Injuries were too severe, his body ravaged by the brutal attack of the shark. As Daniel looked on helplessly, his heart breaking with every passing moment, he watched his beloved brother slip away, his life extinguished in the blink of an eye. The trauma of that day would haunt Daniel for years to come, casting a dark shadow over his once vibrant spirit. The guilt of being unable to save his brother, coupled with the pain of witnessing his death firsthand, threatened to consume him whole, leaving him a shell of his former self. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Daniel solemnly vowed to himself that he would never set foot in the ocean again. Once a source of joy and freedom, the water now held only fear and anguish for him, its depths concealing dangers that he could not bear to face. For 5 long years, Daniel remained true to his promise, avoiding the ocean like the plague and burying himself in his work as a technician. But no matter how hard he tried to escape the memories of that fateful day, they continued to haunt him, lurking in the shadows of his mind like silent specters waiting to pounce. Then one day something changed. A glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness, a flicker of light that dared to pierce the veil of despair that had enveloped Daniel's soul. It came in the form of a young boy, a patient in the hospital where Daniel worked, whose eyes sparkled with wonder and curiosity as he regaled Daniel with tales of his adventures in the ocean. Inspired by the boy's bravery and resilience, Daniel was drawn back to the water, his fear and apprehension giving way to a newfound sense of determination and purpose. With each passing day, he took small steps towards overcoming his trauma, gradually rediscovering the joy and wonder that had once defined his relationship with the ocean. And so, on the 5th anniversary of his brother's death, Daniel returned to the beach where it had all begun, his heart heavy with grief yet buoyed by a newfound sense of hope. As he stood on the shore, gazing out at the vast ocean stretching before him, he felt a sense of peace wash over him, a sense of closure that he had thought would never come. At that moment, Daniel realized that while he could never erase the pain of losing his brother, he could choose to honor his memory by embracing life and all its uncertainties. As he waded into the water, feeling the cool embrace of the ocean against his skin, he knew he was finally ready to let go of the past and embrace the future ahead. As he swam, Daniel found himself drawn deeper and deeper into the embrace of the ocean, its depths calling out to him like a siren song. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to surrender to the current's pull, letting go of his pain and sorrow as he floated weightlessly in the water. But just as he began to lose himself in the soothing rhythm of the waves, a sudden movement caught his eye. A dark shadow gliding silently beneath the surface. Panic surged through him as the memories of that fateful day came rushing back with all the force of a tidal wave, threatening to engulf him once more. Instinctively, Daniel froze, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the shadowy figure draw closer and closer. For a moment he was paralyzed with fear, the specter of the shark looming large in his mind. As the shark's razor-sharp teeth sank into his flesh, Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline course through his veins, his every instinct screaming for him to fight back. With a primal roar, he summoned all the strength and determination within him, refusing to let the jaws of despair close around him once more. Drawing upon the memory of his brother, whose spirit lived on within him, Daniel lashed out with all the fury a man possessed. With no weapon but his bare hands, he fought back against the relentless onslaught of the shark, his blows fueled by a fierce determination to survive. Each strike was a testament to his resilience, a defiant stand against the forces that sought to drag him down. With every blow, he pushed himself beyond the limits of pain and fear, refusing to surrender to the darkness that threatened to consume him. As the shark's grip tightened around him, Daniel focused all his energy on one goal: survival. With a ferocity born of desperation, he struck out at the predator with all the strength he could muster, driving his fists into its gills with relentless determination. The shark recoiled in pain, its hold on Daniel weakening with each successive blow. With one final desperate effort, Daniel delivered a crushing blow to the shark's vulnerable gills, causing it to release its grip and retreat into the depths from whence it came. Daniel emerged from the water battered and bruised but triumphant, gasping for breath. At that moment he realized he had survived the ordeal and emerged more vital than ever. No longer a victim of his past, Daniel had become a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most harrowing of challenges. He had found the strength to fight back in the face of adversity, refusing to let the darkness win. The submersible descended into the abyss, its lights piercing the murky depths of the Caribbean Sea off the Yucatan Peninsula. Inside the cramped sphere, 3 researchers sat hunched over controls and monitors. It was a humid July 15, 2003. But down here, the temperature held steady at a bone-chilling 4 degrees Celsius. Leading the team was Dr. Anya Castillo, a Mexican marine biologist whose childhood fascination with the ocean had turned into a lifelong passion. This expedition was the culmination of years of work. Sonar readings had revealed an extensive underwater cave system, untouched, its secrets a potential treasure trove of scientific data. Anya hoped to find new species, unique geological formations, maybe even clues about the ancient Maya civilization. Beside her was Kenji Tanaka, a brilliant but enigmatic Japanese engineer. He had designed their submersible specifically for this type of research. Small and agile, it could navigate tight spaces larger submersibles couldn't dream of reaching. Dr. Thomas Bennett, a brash American biologist specializing in shark behavior, was rounding out the team. Bull sharks in particular were known to frequent these waters, and Thomas's expertise would be vital if they encountered trouble. The day they had started with excitement and meticulous checks. Each piece of equipment had to function flawlessly, thousands of meters below the surface. Now they were explorers venturing into the unknown. The submersible's lights revealed a breathtaking spectacle. Stalactites dripped from the cavern ceilings. Schools of bioluminescent fish flickered through the darkness, and ancient rock formations hinted at untold geological history. As a child, Anya had dreamed of being an astronaut. This felt eerily similar, exploring a frontier just as alien to humans. Her pulse quickened with each discovery. They documented species never seen before and took core samples for geological analysis, Anya's heart singing with the thrill of it all. Then, Kenji's voice crackled over the speakers, his tone urgent. He pointed out a series of tremors on the seismic readout. Something down here was moving, and it was big. Thomas peered at the monitor, his tanned features turning pale. Those weren't random geological shifts. They had a pattern, a rhythm, almost like footsteps. Before he could voice his growing suspicion, the submersible lurched violently. A colossal shape had collided with them, its force throwing them against the walls. Panic flared, followed by a chilling realization. They were under attack. Outside, in the limited visibility, multiple shadowy forms circled. Bull sharks, dozens of them, drawn by the disturbance their presence had created. This pristine cave wasn't just a scientific wonder, but a hunting ground. Terror seized Anya as she realized the implications of the bull shark attack. Their sturdy submersible might withstand a single strike, but a relentless, coordinated assault was another matter. These predators were known for their aggression and persistence. They wouldn't give up until they claimed their prize. Kenji's face, set in grim determination, flicked through a series of emergency protocols. Their oxygen was alarmingly low. They'd planned for hours of exploration, not a siege within the caves. Thomas swore under his breath, his shark expertise proving useless behind the submersible's metal shell. Every sonar ping revealed more sharks joining the swarm outside, a tightening circle of predators. They had to do something, anything. Anya's mind raced, desperately trying to find a solution. Suddenly, she remembered the bioluminescent fish they'd observed earlier. Could those flickers of light be used as a distraction? She grabbed the microphone, outlining a risky plan. Switching off the submersible's external lights, they navigated with minimal instrument illumination, relying on memory and sonar to guide them deeper into the cave system. The sharks, confused by the sudden darkness, dispersed somewhat. Then, Kenji activated a release mechanism, flooding the surrounding area with the bioluminescent plankton they'd collected earlier. The water erupted in an explosion of shimmering light. Instinctively drawn to the disturbance, the sharks swarmed toward the glowing cloud. Taking the opportunity, Kenji gunned the submersible's engines, maneuvering them through a narrow passageway the bulky sharks couldn't reach. For a few precious moments, they were clear, but their reprieve was short-lived. Some sharks, sensing the trick, returned their focus to the submersible. The attacks resumed, each impact sending tremors through the craft and draining its dwindling power. Anya calculated their oxygen reserves, the numbers flashing like a death sentence in her mind. Just when despair seemed inevitable, the sonar picked up a faint signal. Another passageway, too narrow for the sharks, snaked upwards. Their only hope was to bet on it being a shortcut back to the open ocean. Yet there was no guarantee the passage wasn't a dead end, trapping them even further with no chance of escape. It was a desperate gamble, but they had no choice, with death snapping at their heels. Kenji piloted the submersible upwards, its metal hull scraping against ancient rock. Anya held her breath, every creak and groan amplified by the unbearable tension. Then, a glimmer of light. The passage opened into a vast, shallow cavern. Frantically, Kenji maneuvered them towards the opening. Just as the first bull shark managed to squeeze through, they burst into the open water. They surfaced amidst a storm, the rain a welcome contrast to the claustrophobic nightmare below. A Coast Guard vessel, alerted to their emergency beacon, was just minutes away. As they were hauled on board, Anya looked back at the churning waters, the entrance to the underwater caves barely more than a ripple in the endless sea. Back on dry land, the ordeal felt surreal. News of their miraculous survival made headlines, but the near-death experience had left its mark. Thomas was haunted by the knowledge that bull sharks, usually solitary hunters, had shown signs of pack-like behavior during the attack. It hinted at intelligence far more disturbing than random animal aggression. Anya grappled with the guilt of venturing into the unknown, of disturbing an ecosystem humans were never meant to enter. Ever the stoic, Kenji hid his trauma behind a meticulous analysis of every data point, determined to build a better, safer submersible for the future. The ocean depths still held their secrets, but their allure was forever tainted with shadows. For the survivors, the allure of discovery now came with a heavy dose of respect and just a touch of fear for the raw, unpredictable power of the natural world. A thick, soupy fog clung to the flat gray waters of Falmouth Beach as the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon. The quiet summer morning was disrupted only by the occasional cries of gulls searching for an easy meal among the tidal racklines. Despite the blanketing mist drastically reducing visibility, 24-year-old Megan and her friend Anna Cassidy slipped off their flip-flops and left them in sloppy piles atop the coarse sand. With quick tugs, they wriggled free of their tank tops and shorts before bracing themselves against the chilly surf with sharp inhales. Early morning swims were a ritual the two friends shared throughout the summer months. They adored the muted silence and dewy smells of humid salt air mingling with the heavier petrichor wafting up from the tide pools. Today, though, the velvety mists shrouded everything more than a few yards away into an impenetrable void. Still, Megan and Anna paid it no mind as they ventured out into the soupy shallows until the chalky water level reached their upper thighs. Their breaths turned to vapor with each exhale as they began swimming parallel to the shore with a practiced breaststroke. The lapping rhythm of the ebbing waves and occasional screech of hunting gulls quickly faded from their senses as Megan and Anna settled into a tranquil routine of surfacing for air before plunging back into the eerie isolation of the fog bank. A few hundred yards down the shoreline, the metallic aroma of fresh chum wafted through the air in a pungent cloud. Every summer, the local sport fishing crowd gathered at first light to cast baited lines for the seasonal striped bass that passed through the area. Their indiscriminate chumming masked any warnings that might have alerted Megan to the heightened predatory danger. About a half-mile offshore and completely obscured by the dense fog, a large bull shark had taken notice of the chumming parties as amino-rich particles began wafting through the currents. The feeding frenzy quickly became a siren's call, drawing it closer to the scent trail's source. Megan took a deep breath and allowed her body to sink below the surface once more, luxuriating in the near-sensory deprivation of swimming blindly through the muffled silence. She strained her ears, attempting to triangulate her location based on any discernible sounds. That's when a thunderous crash of weightless porcelain erupted just yards away, shattering the stillness and causing Megan to flinch in alarm. Before she could process what was happening, the mammoth bull shark had her directly in its broad-nosed sights and quickly closed the distance with a dozen powerful tail swipes. Its sandy brown body remained practically invisible until the wide, serrated jaws unhinged mere inches from Megan's splashing form. Anna managed to suck in a shriek of terror as the jagged night teeth emerged from the ghostly mists, piercing Megan's torso. Anna watched in horror as the unyielding jaws clamped down, obliterating bone and cartilage as bloody froth bubbled from the ragged holes in Megan's punctured organs. The shark whipped its thrashing head, violently dismembering Megan's body as she slipped into shock. Instinctively, Megan's body went rigid as a result of the shock and trauma caused by the excruciating pain of the shark tearing through her flesh. With her eyes bulging in horror and her body frozen in fear, all Anna could do was witness her friend being butchered until Megan's sight faded and her mutilated remains disappeared into the black depths with the shark. Fragmented glimpses of Megan's body being violently dismembered can be seen under the blood-soaked waters. Anna let out a piercing shriek. She wanted to move away from the scene, but her body betrayed her. She could still smell the pungent scent of her friend's blood as it stuck with her body, making her want to vomit out of fear and disgust. The next notice of activity came from the beach itself as the early morning chumming rituals were interrupted by Anna's ghastly screaming piercing through the fog cover. A handful of anglers rushed towards the sound, while desperately shouting for the source of anguish among the crashing waves. Within minutes, the waters erupted in a turbid mist of pink as Megan's body resurfaced, helplessly ragdolled by the relentless thrashing. Her butchered appendages and mutilated remains materialized across the beachscape with each fresh wave of grisly crimson flooding towards the shoreline where Anna had crawled, shell-shocked. By the time emergency responders arrived, the attack had concluded in the distance, leaving only Anna as the sole witness alongside the blood-stained evidence of carnage along the sand and sea foam. The dense fog refused to shed any insight into what exactly happened until the following morning, once the sea became clear. Upon further investigation, the distinctive bite radius and unique tearing patterns of the mutilated remains revealed the unmistakable calling cards of a bull shark, an aggressive species rarely encountered in the calm New England waters around Falmouth Beach. However, it appeared the culprit's proximity was likely temporary and situational. Forensic analysis of the chum buckets used by the local chumming groups that morning showed they contained a mixture of expired meats, fish guts, and carcasses, the kind of indiscriminate proteins that could easily lure opportunistic sharks from miles away with the right current patterns. While shocking, the incident prompted an immediate review of safety protocols around the community's beaches and fishing habits. Most notably, restrictions were placed on swimming during dense fog or inclement weather conditions that impede visual sightlines. Furthermore, a comprehensive waste management policy was enacted to ensure local fishing outfitters dispose of expired bait and chum materials in a responsible way that doesn't attract the wrong kind of hungry scavengers. Though the scars from that morning's savage attack would never fully heal, Anna was determined to ensure Megan's death was not in vain. She advocated tirelessly for renewed safety guidelines around the community's beaches and fishing habits to help prevent any more such unthinkable tragedies from taking others by surprise in the future. The turquoise waters of South Africa's Umkomaas coast sparkled under the midday sun. This hidden reef was an escape for experienced scuba diver Sarah Makubele, a place of vibrant corals and mesmerizing fish. It was June 12, 1999, and she hoped for an escape from her hectic life on shore. Sarah was a marine biologist by trade, working tirelessly to understand and protect South Africa's diverse marine life. Sharks held a particular fascination for her. Growing up in a landlocked village, the ocean had always felt like a dream. Now she studied those creatures most feared by humankind. Great whites in particular were a paradox majestic hunters, yet vulnerable to overfishing and habitat destruction. Sarah's research was vital, yet funding was scarce. She often was torn between fieldwork and the endless grant applications that kept her work afloat. Today was meant to be different. An anonymous donation had sponsored this expedition, a rare chance to focus solely on observation. Her dive buddy, Thomas, was a seasoned underwater photographer tasked with capturing the elusive beauty of this reef. He was also her partner, the one constant in her whirlwind life. Their shared passion for the ocean deepened their bond, a precious anchor in a chaotic world. Beneath the waves, an entirely different world unfolded. Sarah's cares seemed to dissolve in the blue, her mind settling into a rhythm dictated by the gentle sway of the sea. Sunlight danced on schools of silverfish, their movement like a hypnotic ballet. Thomas signaled nearby, his camera poised. It felt like a charmed day. Unbeknownst to them, another presence lurked in the deeper waters, a great white shark, nearly 5 meters long, had been cruising this territory for days. Food was plentiful, yet a gnawing hunger persisted, a primal drive honed by millions of years of evolution. These waters were its hunting ground, and with an apex predator's instinct, it sensed opportunity in the distance. Sarah's research mind noted the sudden shift in the reef's behavior. The once dazzling fish vanished like a flicked switch, leaving an ominous void. Years of experience told her something was wrong. Thomas focused on his camera, but he had yet to notice the change. Her pulse quickened as a vast shadow appeared from the blue haze. The great white creature sculpted for power was already in attack mode. Misidentifying the diver's silhouettes as prey and driven by overwhelming instinct, it lunged. Time seemed to shatter the moment the shark struck. Sarah had seconds to process the sight of those massive jaws, a yawning maw of razor-sharp teeth. Her survival instincts kicked in, but there was nowhere to run or hide on the open sea floor. The force of the impact was staggering. The shark slammed into Sarah, seizing her torso with a brutal twist. Thomas, his focus finally ripped from the camera, watched in horror as the water around Sarah erupted in a violent crimson cloud. His own body reacted instinctively. With a desperate surge, he swam towards her, a futile attempt at intervention against the primordial force thrashing just meters away. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the attack ceased. Disoriented and tasting blood, the great white released its mangled prey and disappeared back into the depths. Thomas reached Sarah's side, his own body thrumming with adrenaline. What remained of her was barely recognizable. Yet, miraculously, he detected a faint pulse. With the strength of desperation, fueled by the impossible hope that she might still cling to life, he pulled her toward the surface. Breaking through the waterline, Thomas screamed for help, his cries echoing across the lonely ocean. His vision blurred with a mix of tears and seawater. This idyllic reef was now stained with the violent evidence of their ordeal. A fishing vessel, thankfully within sight, responded to Thomas's frantic signals. Rough hands pulled them on board, the crew reacting with shock and grim pragmatism. They'd seen this kind of carnage before. Someone radioed ahead for emergency assistance while others attempted to stabilize Sarah's horrific injuries. There was little they could do but offer crude first aid and wait for the agonizingly slow journey back to shore. Clutching what remained of Sarah, Thomas could only pray for a miracle. Back on land, chaos awaited. Paramedics swarmed the dock, their faces grim as they assessed the extent of Sarah's wounds. She was alive, but barely. The race to the hospital became a blur of sirens and flashing lights. Inside its sterile walls, teams of doctors fought to salvage what they could. But the damage was too severe. The news of Sarah's death rippled through the tight-knit marine biology community and across South Africa. There was heartbreak, outrage, and fear. Sharks, already demonized, became the focus of renewed calls for culling and increased beach safety measures. For Thomas, the world had imploded. His Sarah, vibrant and passionate, was gone. In the aftermath, he was at the center of a media frenzy he didn't want. He gave statements, faced well-meaning but intrusive questions, and endured the public's insatiable appetite for details of the tragedy. Yet, all of it felt disconnected, a cruel performance that held no meaning amidst the gaping chasm of his grief. On that balmy 80-degree morning, the pebbly beach east of South Africa was abuzz with anticipation, as world-class swimmers from across the globe gathered for the prestigious international swimming competition. With their sleek speedos and brightly colored swim caps, they stood poised on the shore, their eyes fixed on the azure expanse of the oceanic arena before them. This competition was no ordinary event. It was renowned for its challenging location. Nestled within the treacherous waters of Shark Alley, a notorious stretch of sea teeming with formidable predators, particularly the fearsome bull sharks that lurked beneath the surface with predatory intent. Among the competitors stood Mick Favre, a seasoned veteran of the sport who had been crowned champion on 2 separate occasions. With a steely resolve born of countless hours of training and preparation, Favre exuded confidence as he awaited the start of the 4-day competition. His muscles rippled beneath his bronzed skin, a testament to the countless laps he had swum in preparation for this moment. Mick Favre stood tall and resolute on the starting block, his gaze fixed on the shimmering expanse of the pool before him. As one of the leading swimmers of his generation, Favre's name was synonymous with greatness, a testament to his unrivaled skill and unwavering determination in the face of adversity. But as he prepared to dive into the water, a shadow loomed over him, a formidable opponent named Richmond Gray. Gray was an American swimmer whose prowess in the pool was legendary. With a sleek, streamlined physique and a relentless drive to succeed, Gray had dominated the world of competitive swimming for years, leaving a trail of records and accolades in his wake. His speed and agility were unmatched, his technique flawless, a true force to be reckoned with in the water. Throughout his illustrious career, Gray amassed an impressive array of titles and awards, cementing his status as one of the most excellent swimmers ever. From Olympic gold medals to world championship victories, Gray conquered almost every challenge that stood in his way, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind about his unparalleled talent and skill. Lise Wills, a formidable figure in competitive swimming, was the organizer of the event. With a discerning eye for talent and a strict set of criteria, Wills ensured that only the most elite swimmers were granted entry into the competition. From their 20s to their late 50s, each competitor came with an impressive resume, boasting many achievements and accolades from past competitions. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden hue across the shimmering waters, the tension on the beach reached a fever pitch. The spectators, a diverse array of avid swimming enthusiasts and curious onlookers, lined the shore, their voices rising in excitement as the swimmers prepared to take the plunge. As the starting horn blared, signaling the beginning of the race, Favre surged forward with the explosive power of a torpedo, his muscles burning with exertion as he propelled himself through the water with fierce determination. But he knew victory would not come easy, not with Gray hot on his heels, his powerful strokes propelling him forward with relentless speed and precision. Despite his best efforts, Favre could feel Gray's presence looming behind him like a specter, driving him to push himself harder and faster than ever before. With each stroke, he fought against the relentless pull of the water, his lungs burning with the effort as he raced towards the finish line with single-minded determination. As the race unfolded, the tension in the air was palpable, the spectators holding their breath as Favre and Gray battled neck and neck for supremacy in the water. With each passing lap, the gap between them narrowed, their bodies moving in perfect harmony with the rhythm of the water as they vied for dominance in the fiercely contested race. Within minutes, they had reached Shark Alley, but Favre and Gray were undeterred, their minds fixed on reaching the finish line ahead of their competitors. However, as they pressed forward, the ocean churned beneath them, its azure depths concealing the dangers that lurked beneath the surface. And then, without warning, disaster struck. A shark fin appeared next to Favre, its presence sending a jolt of fear coursing through his veins. In a split second, his head whipped to the side in panic, and he disappeared beneath the waves. The sudden attack caught everyone off guard, sending shockwaves of panic rippling through the water as swimmers scrambled to escape the predator's grasp. But amidst the chaos, Gray remained calm and composed, his training and experience guiding him as he raced to his competitor. With a burst of speed, he closed the gap between them, his powerful strokes propelling him forward with determined resolve. As he reached Favre, he wasted no time in taking action. His hands moved with lightning speed as he grappled with the shark desperately to free his fellow swimmer from its razor-sharp teeth. Together they fought against the relentless predator, their voices raised in urgent cries for help as they struggled to escape its grip. Meanwhile, on shore, the race organizers sprang into action, their voices blaring over loudspeakers as they issued a frantic warning for the race to stop and for all swimmers to evacuate the water immediately. Moments later, 3 rescue boats, including jet skis, rushed towards the scene, their crews armed with tranquilizer guns and ready to assist in any way they could. With a combination of skill and sheer determination, they managed to shoot tranquilizers at the shark, causing it to release its grip on Favre and retreat into the depths from whence it came, before the dart kicked into action. With a sigh of relief, they pulled Favre and Gray onto one of the rescue boats, their hearts pounding with adrenaline as they realized just how close they had come to disaster. As they made their way back to shore, the full extent of injuries became apparent. a deep bite wound on his left leg from the shark's teeth. Though the injury was severe, it could have been far worse without Favre's composure and quick action in the face of such a terrifying situation. The competition was swiftly canceled, and the swimming organization issued a heartfelt apology for the incident and expressed gratitude that no one had been seriously injured. Despite the disappointment of not being able to complete the race, the safety and well-being of the swimmers remained the top priority. The incident garnered widespread media coverage, with television announcers highlighting the inherent dangers of swimming in open water, particularly in areas known to be frequented by sharks. When asked about his physical and mental well-being, Favre assured reporters that he was completely fine, his resilience and determination shining through in the face of adversity. As he reflected on the events of that fateful day, Favre knew that he had faced one of the most significant challenges of his career and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of the encounter would linger both physically and emotionally, he refused to let fear dictate his future in the sport he loved. And as he looked ahead to the next competition, he did so with a renewed sense of purpose and determination, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with unwavering resolve. The inky blackness of the Indian Ocean stretched out infinitely from the dive team's boat as it gently rocked atop the calm surface waters near Ningaloo Reef. A sliver of waxing moon provided the scant illumination that allowed them to begin suiting up and checking their dive gear one final time. For Eliza and her experienced crew of night diving fanatics, there were few things more exhilarating than descending beneath the velvety obsidian waves to witness the underwater universe truly come alive after dark. The reef systems transform into a bustling metropolis after sundown, with exotic and elusive creatures emerging from their diurnal shelters to hunt, mate, and roam the coastline. As the team lead, Eliza ensured each diver's equipment was functioning flawlessly. Underwater camera rigs with bright LED lamps, location signaling devices, cutting tools, and most crucially, a plentiful supply of enriched air tanks for extended bottom time. One by one, the 5 divers back-rolled into the shadowy waters, fastidious about following protocols to the letter on these inherently higher-risk outings. The initial descent shafts filtered the last glimpses of moonlight until the group was surrounded by a starry void of open sea, with powerful lamps cutting through the mirage. Eliza allowed herself a brief moment of childlike wonder, watching the ethereal bioluminescent plankton spark and glimmer as it scattered around her dive buddies. Upon reaching the outer reef wall at 60 feet, the group oriented themselves with the shimmering faux daylight of the lamp rays reflecting off myriad kaleidoscopic surfaces. The vibrant colors and activity were dazzling compared to daytime dives as schools of trevally, pick-handle barracuda, and fusiliers paraded past. For nearly an hour, the group remained mesmerized by snapshot glimpses into the secret lives of this hidden realm, before striking out towards a deeper channel lined with wild sea whips. Their paths converged there, with Eliza motioning to the others about a particularly robust filamid night shrimp colony carpeting the seabed ahead. In her near decade of leading these nightly expeditions, she'd learned that the filamids served as an ideal attractant for all types of aquatic activity, filtering through the channel to feed on their numbers. To the other divers, it appeared as if Eliza was attempting to bait the waters with her illuminated presence, lingering amid the shrimp colony. And indeed, her intuitions were sound, as a sudden burst of activity in her peripheral vision signaled something massive darting across her lamp's beam. Eliza hastily spun her head and camera rig towards the subject, greeted by a primordial visage of teeth unlike any she'd borne witness to in the wild before. A massive tiger shark, nearly 15 feet in length, glided directly towards the dive team. The creature's distinctive blunt snout and banded camouflage pattern immediately triggered a visceral knot of terror in Eliza's core. As one of the ocean's most formidable apex predators, the tiger's aggressive reputation preceded it. As calm as Eliza tried to remain, the sight of witnessing such a ghostly apparition cruising with unmistakable predatory intent sent a visceral chill of fright lancing down her spine. Rather than retreat safely away from the group, she found herself fixated in place by eerie curiosity, fighting to steady her breathing as the shark closed to mere body lengths away. In that instant, Eliza raised her camera again, determined to capture a coveted glimpse into one of nature's most fearsome apex predators. The glinting electric blue illuminators reflected with menacing brilliance in the tiger shark's cold black eyes as it locked onto her outline with undivided focus. Powerful tail beats propelled the sleek juggernaut of muscle forward in a sudden burst that left Eliza paralyzed like a gasping insect in the grip of an inescapable tractor beam. Jagged rows of awl-shaped teeth gnashed open wide as the shark slammed into her torso, driving the buoyant air tanks against her lower back with concussive force. Panic enveloped Eliza's mind in a blinding migraine as she fought to regain control of the unwieldy inertia now tumbling her into a tragic backdrop of endless black oblivion. Tiger sharks do not bite their prey so much as utilize a devastating grip and thrash technique, violently shaking their massive bodies in a death roll to slice through flesh and bone. This swiftly became Eliza's hellish reality as the nightmare jaws clamped around her right shoulder and upper back, immediately convulsing in a whiplash frenzy. Concentric rings of burning torment ricocheted inward from the excruciating wound site across her body as the shark continued its berserker velocity of side-to-side headshakes. Losing more and more comprehension of the dark surroundings with each whiplash impact, Eliza could only watch in terrifying detachment as the rhythmic thrashing steadily tore away more chunks of isolated meat and bone shards from her mangled torso. Each remittent cycle brought her deeper into shades of surreal dissociative trance, until she no longer recognized the cloud of ghostly mist dissipating around her. Despite her air tank being located in the dead zone of the shark's thrashing jaws, it still received enough scathing impacts to finally rupture. Eliza's hazed focus was jolted back, present by the stomach-dropping force field of air bubbles suddenly fountaining upwards from her shredded torso. She managed a dying glance at her dwindling depth gauge as the emergency sparged the remnants of her enriched supply in an unavoidable plume. She had no means of arresting her rapid, uncontrolled descent, as the limitations of her world imploded into the all-consuming darkness. When the body decked across the hull of the diver's support vessel hours later, its butchered condition told a gruesomely vivid tale of the tiger shark's predation. What remained of Eliza's mangled torso was hanging by a sinewy thread, with complete disarticulation of her right arm and shoulder globally. Rings of ragged trauma striped across her abdomen and suit in concentric layers of serrated precision. Though the ambush took place in an instant, the psychological toll that followed lingered for months until Eliza chose to open up publicly about her travails, recovering from the brush with the abyss. While her physical injuries would ultimately plateau short of survival, the psychological trauma refused to dissipate as easily. Night terrors of the tiger shark's cold, dead eyes fixed onto her as it thrashed her body apart like a rag doll. Unshakable panic attacks at the sound of drains or whirlpools, and a waking existence tormented by the flashbulb memories of her mind and body disassociating into an empty void of pain and severance. Eliza wondered if it was the rupturing of her final air supply that prevented the tiger from finishing the job, or if she simply expired in the pitch-black depths beforehand. Either way, the cold reality of her nighttime underwater hell left permanent scars both inside and out. But by courageously sharing her story, Eliza sparked a discourse about the real dangers posed by night diving and the skill equipment requirements for safely interacting with nature's nocturnal hunters. While it may always remain one of the ocean's most tantalizing frontiers, that same mystery carries profound and ever-present risks that should never be underestimated. Beneath the starlit sky, the Maldivian sea shimmered with an ethereal glow. 5 tourists had ventured into this underwater dreamscape, eager to witness the famed bioluminescence themselves. It was December 5, 2001. A night dive promised the otherworldly experience only found deep beneath the waves. Leading the group was Nadia, a seasoned dive master with an infectious passion for the ocean. Having grown up on these islands, the sea was her backyard, its mysteries and rhythms woven into her very being. Tonight, excitement coursed through her veins. Bioluminescence was unpredictable. Sharing this phenomenon with newcomers was always a thrill. A young British couple, Emily and Ben, were among the tourists on their honeymoon. Their shared fascination with the natural world had drawn them to the Maldives, a wedding gift more precious than anything else on their registry. Then there was Marcus, a middle-aged German photographer hoping to capture the bioluminescence on film. His worn camera bag and waterproof flashlight hinted at a life spent chasing elusive images. And finally, Priya, an Indian marine biology student whose wide eyes betrayed her mix of awe and nerves. This was her first night dive, a thrilling and slightly terrifying step into the field she dreamed of working in one day. The day she had been spent with meticulous preparation. Nadia checked and rechecked gear, explaining the dive plan in precise detail. Emily and Ben experienced divers themselves and absorbed everything with enthusiasm. Marcus peppered Nadia with questions about the best lighting techniques for underwater photography, while Priya clung to Nadia's every word, her fingers nervously adjusting her mask. As the sun descended, casting long shadows across the white sand beach, they boarded the dive boat. Laughter mingled with nervous chatter as the small vessel chugged away from the resort's twinkling lights. They donned wetsuits out on the open water, the neoprene a warm hug against the evening chill. One by one, they strapped on weight belts and air tanks, the familiar clinking of metal a rhythmic pre-dive ritual. Finally, the moment had arrived. Standing at the boat's edge, their hearts pounding, they took that giant leap into the unknown. Bubbles fizzed around them as they descended, the last remnants of daylight filtering through the crystal-clear water. With a flick of a switch, Nadia turned on her dive light. Specks of blue swirled in the beam, an electrifying display of nature's magic. The group gasped in unison, mesmerized by the underwater fireworks. They followed Nadia, more bottomless, their movements stirring more vibrant bursts of light. Emily and Ben reached out, hands brushing amidst the glittering clouds. This was a moment they'd treasure forever. They didn't know that the bioluminescence had attracted more than just wonderstruck humans. Tiger sharks, known to prowl these waters, honed in on the disturbance. Unlike reef sharks, which are often timid, tigers are curious apex predators, and their keen senses detect potential prey lurking in the darkness. A surge of panic ripped through Nadia as the truth dawned on her. Those weren't just curious sharks, they were hunting. One in particular, bolder than the rest, accelerated towards the group. Nadia reacted instinctively, shoving Priya and Marcus further behind her while she flailed her dive light in the approaching shark's direction. For a split second it seemed startled, then attacked again with renewed aggression. Instinct took over. Nadia charged the tiger head-on, a desperate attempt to scare it off. Its razor-lined mouth gaped open inches from her outstretched hand, then a solid thud. The shark veered sideways, its momentum thrown off course. Armed with his camera pole, Ben had jabbed the shark forcefully on its sensitive snout. Seeing her husband's bravery, Emily frantically signaled to the others to start their emergency ascent. They kicked furiously upwards, the bioluminescence a swirling cloud of light around them, like a shroud painting them as targets. The sharks, momentarily disoriented, circled beneath, their movements growing more agitated. One peeled off from the others and shot upwards with alarming speed. Its target was Priya, lagging slightly behind. Nadia screamed, an underwater cry muffled by her regulator. But there was no time to react. The shark lunged and Priya disappeared in a swirl of sand and dark blood. Terror turned to rage. Nadia, Ben, and Marcus reached the surface, gasping for breath. Emily, however, was nowhere to be found. Panic threatened to overwhelm them, the boat a distant speck against the vast night sea. And beneath the waves, shadows moved. Nadia forced herself back underwater, her eyes scanning desperately for any sign of Emily. Then she saw her. Emily was entangled in a discarded fishing net, the tiger shark circling with predatory intent. It lunged, and Emily thrashed helplessly against the nylon trap. With a surge of adrenaline, Nadia swam towards her friend, dive knife drawn. In the frantic fight that followed, time seemed to distort. She slashed at the shark and at the net, Emily's wide eyes mirroring her terror. Finally, with a desperate swipe, the net tore. Kicking with all their might, Nadia and Emily surfaced, dragging each other to the boat like debris after a shipwreck. Hauling themselves aboard, they collapsed on the deck, sobs mixing with the frantic explanations for the horrified boat crew. Still in a frenzy from the hunt, the tiger sharks seemed reluctant to give up their prey. They circled the boat, their fins slicing through the moonlit water. It took an agonizing hour. the crew flashing emergency strobes and making as much noise as possible, before the sharks finally disappeared into darkness. The aftermath was a numb blur. The Coast Guard arrived, their questions jarring. Marcus sat hunched over, his precious camera abandoned beside him. Ben held Emily, both shaking uncontrollably. Nadia, bruised and aching, was a shell of her former self. Guilt gnawed at her. She should have seen the signs and aborted the dive earlier. Yet she also knew the unpredictable savagery of the ocean. Sometimes nature played by its own rules, and humans were merely pawns in the struggle for survival. As dawn broke, painting the sky in streaks of soft pink, the rescue vessel chugged back into port. Priya's body was never recovered. The bioluminescence had faded, leaving behind only the harsh light of day and the unbearable reality of a dream holiday turned nightmare. For the survivors, the sea would never hold the same magic again. Haunted by the shadows in the depths, they were forever marked by the night the ocean bared its teeth. The Hardy family, a quintet of adventurers seeking respite from the relentless pace of 21st century life, found solace in the azure waters of the Maldives. Amidst the chaos of the modern world, they carved out moments of tranquility, escaping to the pristine shores of Ulagan, a secluded island paradise nestled within the Maldives archipelago. With eager anticipation, the family embarked on their journey, leaving behind the hustle and bustle of everyday life for the serenity of the open sea. A short motor trip to the harbor, followed by a leisurely sail aboard their rented yacht, brought them to their destination, a secluded haven surrounded by crystal-clear waters and vibrant coral reefs teeming with life. A panorama of breathtaking beauty greeted the Hardy family as they anchored in the shallow waters, only 3 meters deep. The azure blue waters stretched before them, merging seamlessly with the endless ocean of sky above. It was a sight to behold, a reminder of the awe-inspiring power of nature and the simple joys that awaited those who dared to seek them. For Hughes and Lara Hardy and their 3 children, Gary, Hart, and Will, this was more than just a vacation. It was a chance to reconnect as a family and forge memories that would last a lifetime. As they stood on the deck of their yacht, basking in the warm embrace of the tropical sun, they couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for the opportunity to escape the hustle and bustle of their lives back home in America. But they were not alone in their quest for tranquility. As the day wore on, more yachts arrived, their sleek silhouettes dotting the horizon like sentinels of serenity. Yet, despite the influx of visitors, the seafaring travelers had an air of camaraderie, a shared understanding of the importance of slowing down and savoring simple pleasures. The family's arrival at the port of Ulagan in the Maldives was met with efficiency and warmth as officials promptly cleared them for entry. Amar, their friendly agent, facilitated the process quickly, providing them with SIM cards and ensuring their passports were stamped and validated. With the formalities swiftly concluded, the Hardy family was officially welcomed into the idyllic paradise of the Maldives. While Hughes and Lara attended to the necessary registrations, their children, Gary, Will, and Hart, eagerly anticipated their first foray into the crystal-clear waters surrounding them. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the tranquil bay, the family gathered around the table in the cabin of their yacht for a simple yet satisfying dinner of freshly baked bread, a taste of home in a far-flung corner of the world. The following day, they dawned bright and clear, offering endless possibilities for exploration and adventure. Determined to connect with their fellow travelers, the Hardy family ventured out from the confines of their yacht, eager to forge new friendships and share in the camaraderie of the maritime community. Hughes's children were drawn to their counterparts on neighboring yachts as they mingled with fellow sailors, exchanging stories and laughter beneath swaying palm trees. Gary, Will, and Hart quickly formed friendships with their newfound companions, bonding over shared experiences and a mutual love of adventure. As night fell and the sky was painted with a tapestry of twinkling stars, Hart suggested a nighttime swim, an invitation eagerly accepted by his siblings. With their permission granted, the trio donned their swimsuits and plunged into the cool embrace of the sea, laughter bubbling up as they frolicked in the moonlit waters. Meanwhile, Hughes and Lara engaged in a spirited debate about the wisdom of allowing their children to venture into the water after dark. Lara, ever the protective mother, voiced her concerns about the dangers lurking beneath the surface. At the same time, Hughes argued that the children deserved the chance to enjoy themselves and cool off in the heat of the night. In the end, Lara relented, but not without trepidation. Making her way to the beamlight, she cast its beam across the water, illuminating where her children played. She watched with pride and apprehension in the soft glow of the light as Gary, Will, and Hart continued to splash and play, their laughter mingling with the gentle rhythm of the waves. As the trio frolicked in the water, their laughter mingling with the gentle lapping of the waves, they were oblivious to the danger lurking beneath the surface. Unbeknownst to them, the sound of their splashing had drawn the attention of a pack of hungry sharks, their predatory instincts honed to deadly precision. Will, the youngest of the three, first spotted the shadowy shapes gliding beneath them. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized their peril, his voice ringing out in a frantic cry of warning that echoed across the bay. "Sharks!" he screamed, words slicing through the air like a knife. Panic seized them as they scrambled to reach the yacht's safety, their limbs churning through the water urgently. But their efforts were in vain as one of the sharks closed in, its razor-sharp teeth sinking into Will's flesh with savage force, as if to scold him for letting them off. The trio rallied together in sheer terror, fighting tooth and nail to fend off the relentless predator. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, they lashed out with whatever means they had, driving the shark back with a ferocity born of survival instinct. But their ordeal was far from over. As they turned to swim back to the yacht's safety, their hopes were dashed when they discovered the ladder leading back on board had been broken, a mechanical fault overlooked in their haste to set sail. Fear threatened to consume them as they realized they were stranded in the water, vulnerable to the circling sharks that closed in with each passing moment. Hughes, their father, sprang into action, his instincts as a protector kicking into overdrive. With a strength born of desperation, he reached out a steady hand to his injured son, hauling him aboard the yacht with the help of his other children. Will's anguished cries filled the air as they tended to his wounds, applying a makeshift tourniquet to stem the flow of blood. Hart and Gary were also helped onto the yacht before the sharks could catch up. Will was taken to the hospital that night. After the harrowing incident, Lara solemnly vowed to prioritize her children's safety. With Will's receiving medical attention, the family's holiday was continued, albeit under a shadow of caution. Lara's once carefree demeanor was replaced by vigilant watchfulness, especially regarding water activities. No longer were her children allowed to venture into the water, especially at night, when dangers could lurk unseen. Amidst the azure depths of the remote islands off the Pacific coast, a team of scientists, including Dan Allen, embarked on a marine mission that would forever alter the course of their research. Their expedition to the rugged beauty of the archipelago was marked by a sense of anticipation, a quest to uncover the mysteries hidden beneath the waves. Their journey took them to the uncharted waters surrounding San Benedicto Island, where Dan stumbled upon a small red fish, an enigmatic creature whose identity remained mysterious. Little did they know that this discovery would pale in comparison to what lay ahead. As the team ventured deeper into the azure depths, they stumbled upon an uncharted underwater cave system, a labyrinth of twisting passages and hidden chambers that beckoned with the promise of untold wonders. Yet what set this cave system apart was not just its sheer size, but the rare species of aggressive sharks that patrolled its murky depths. The discovery was both exhilarating and daunting for the researchers, offering a unique opportunity to study these elusive creatures in their natural habitat. But as they delved deeper into the caves, their sense of wonder soon turned to dread when disaster struck in the form of a powerful earthquake. The ground trembled beneath their feet, sending shockwaves rippling through the water as the cave system collided around them. Panic gripped the team as they realized they were trapped, cut off from the outside world with no way to escape. Amidst the chaos, Dan spotted the redfish she had caught with a little net. They knew their only hope was to find a way out before it was too late. But with the walls closing in and the scent of blood from their injured companions drawing the sharks ever closer, the odds were stacked against them like never before. As they plunged deeper into the labyrinth's heart, they encountered one obstacle after another, a maze of narrow passageways filled with jagged rocks, dead ends that led to nowhere, and the ever-present threat of the sharks lurking in the shadows. Yet, amidst the darkness and uncertainty, Dan clung tightly to the net that housed his precious catch, a small glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. But when it seemed like all hope was lost, they stumbled upon a hidden passage leading to the surface, a narrow shaft of light cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With renewed determination, they pressed forward, their hearts pounding with adrenaline as they navigated the final stretch of their harrowing journey. Their triumph, however, was short-lived as they emerged from the depths, only to find themselves far from the safety of their vessel. Injured by rock particles that had fallen during the earthquake, they knew their journey was far from over. With grim determination, they set out to make the arduous journey back to the ship, each step a testament to their unwavering resolve to survive against all odds. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the safety of their vessel, their bodies battered and bruised but their spirits unbroken. As they collapsed onto the deck, exhaustion washing over them like a tidal wave, the team leader realized the true identity of Dan's catch: a wrasse, a common species of tropical fish found in the waters surrounding the islands. Though their ordeal had been harrowing and fraught with danger, they had not suffered in vain. Their discovery, though not the elusive species they had hoped for, reminded them of the unpredictable nature of scientific exploration and the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. As they nursed their wounds and reflected on their narrow escape, they knew their experience would forever shape their understanding of the ocean's depths and the creatures that called it home. Though they faced death and danger at every turn, they emerged more robust and resilient from the darkness than ever. The icy waters of Dyer Island's shoreline were a stark contrast to the blazing African sun overhead, as Mike Rutledge and his friend Anthony Dawson slipped into their dry suits and secured their masks. Behind them, the rugged cliffs rose sharply before flattening out into the rolling hills and scrublands, so iconic to this remote stretch of South Africa's Western Cape. Mike and Anthony took a few moments to run through their mental checklists, ensuring their camera rigs were functioning properly. As experienced marine wildlife photographers, they knew better than to cut corners, especially given the sensitivity of their photo expedition plans for the day. The island's isolated, windswept shores were legendary for the dense population of marine life that called the frigid waters home. Cape fur seals, by the thousands, dominated the beaches in a constant cacophony of barks and squalls. And beneath the waves, one of the world's most concentrated territories for great white sharks, prowled the seals' raucous buffet. But the seal colonies weren't their sole focus for this trip. Their real obsession was capturing elusive footage of the great white shark's legendary breeding grounds. This rarely seen phenomenon could unlock many of the mysterious species' mating habits and reproductive cycles. After a short boat ride, Mike and Anthony, together with their crew, anchored a few hundred yards offshore from Shark Alley, one of Dyer Island's more remote and inaccessible inlets. Undeterred by the crashing waves and deep-water chop, Mike and Anthony pulled on their fins and rolled backward off the boat, temporarily disappearing beneath the steel-gray surface before kicking up towards daylight. A slight current immediately began pulling the duo toward Shark Alley, eerily quiet below the din of the surface world. Checking their camera housings for security one last time, they sank downwards until the ocean floor's muddled shapes finally took form around 50 feet below. It didn't take long for their hunt to bear fruit as they spotted several great whites casually circling the area. Their telltale beady eyes scanned the surroundings as they gracefully weaved through the water. Any initial nerves on Mike's part quickly dissolved as he settled into his element as a stealthy observer. After shadowing the first few sharks for some time, the duo's attention was pulled southward by an unusual cluster of movement and activity near a rocky outcropping along the seafloor. As they drew cautiously nearer, they recognized the immediate cause for the commotion: a pregnant female great white surrounded by nearly a dozen suitors in an epic mating frenzy. As Mike advanced to take snapshots of the incredible scene, Anthony hung back at a safer distance, instinctively uneasy about breaching the perimeter too closely. Mike began snapping furiously as the 15-foot queen shark alternated between aggressively bucking her robust body to keep the smaller males away before going limp enough to permit their clumsy advances. The roiled chaos stirred up a nebulous silt as mating tails thrashed violently, giving Mike's shots an exquisitely gritty and chilling quality. Minutes turned to hours as the opportunity of a lifetime played out before Mike's lens, but the constant action of the still-pitch battle barely registered with his zoned-in psyche. Anthony's unease grew as he noticed Mike's obsession, causing him to drift dangerously close to the swirling vortex of sharks. Unfortunately, his single-minded obsession caused Mike to inadvertently penetrate the perimeter a bit too closely to the swirling vortex of sharks. Despite the rolling melee, one of the largest suitors picked up on the foreign presence creeping within their inner sanctum and broke off in an automatic hardwired response to eliminate the perceived threat to the female. Mike was so hyper-focused on framing his upcoming shot that he missed the flash of the male great white speeding towards him. In the literal blink of an eye, the full linebacker mass of the shark had cannoned squarely into Mike's torso, snapping bone and suit like a twig as the force drove the wind from his lungs in a silent scream. Unable to draw a new breath, Mike reflexively gulped a lungful of seawater as he tumbled end over end, dazed by the blinding white jolt of agony piercing his body. The shark didn't hesitate, spinning and snapping back with blinding quickness as its jaws clamped down on Mike's oxygen tank, shearing the metal and rubber pieces cleanly off. Now weightless from his severed lifeline, Mike desperately attempted swimming towards the distant surface but was rapidly losing strength and awareness as blood and bubbles inked upward in a plume. Just as the glimmer of daylight grew larger above him, the massive predator pounded down again for a final catastrophic hit. The shark's charging skull hammered Mike's face mask, fracturing it and sending a spider web of cracks materializing across the plastic lens. The next unavoidable impact crushed the entire unit again into Mike's face in a burst of crunching bone and gristle, as the lower rows of razor-sharp teeth continued to delve deeper into his mangled flesh. Unable to intervene against such horrific violence, Anthony felt his heart splinter as he watched his friend's lifeless body go limp, dragged away by the shark towards the endless blue depths below. Capturing the image on his own camera, Anthony was not able to move for a few seconds due to shock, but as soon as his senses snapped back, he started swimming to the surface. It was the longest descent of his life. He was afraid to take a look back, knowing that the shark might come after him. But he was able to reach the surface. The shark retreated into the depths, and Anthony made it out alive, unlike his friend Mike, who was not as lucky. The following morning's news broadcasts led with a somber account of Mike Rutledge's demise. The young photographer's risk of breaching the Great White Mating Ground's safety perimeter yielded haunting footage of an unbridled struggle for life itself, amid nature's rawest specimens. Mike's family and fellow conservationists were naturally devastated by the heartbreaking loss. Still, they shouldered the tragedy with the understanding that immense dangers always exist for those willing to encroach upon any species' inviolable breeding spaces. As emotionally wrenching as the events around Dyer Island were, many praised Mike's dedication while also hoping his ultimate sacrifice would vindicate the importance of diligently observing and respecting wildlife from a secure distance. As the sun rose over the tranquil waters of the coastal town of Odisha in India, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. The 5th edition of the International Sand Art Festival was about to kick off, drawing skilled sand artists from across the globe to exhibit their talent in crafting intricate and breathtaking sculptures entirely out of sand. The main beach of Odisha had been transformed into a vibrant hub of creativity, with artists from various corners of the world converging to showcase their skills. Using the beach's golden sands as their canvas, these artists would create intricate designs and sculptures that conveyed meaningful messages, spanning cultural heritage, social issues, and environmental conservation. As the festival commenced, the beach came alive with activity. Dozens of artists, each armed with only a bucket and a shovel, set to work meticulously molding and sculpting the sand into works of art. from towering structures depicting ancient monuments to delicate sculptures, capturing the beauty of nature. The diversity of creations on display was truly awe-inspiring. Among the participants were international representatives from countries across the Western and Eastern hemispheres, each bringing their unique perspective and artistic style to the festival. From the intricately carved patterns of Japanese Zen gardens to the bold and expressive sculptures of African wildlife, the festival celebrated global artistic talent. But amidst the festival's hustle and bustle, an ominous shadow loomed over the tranquil waters of the beach, which became evident after an unexpected incident. Despite this shadow, the festival continued in full swing, with artists working tirelessly to bring their visions to life in the soft sands of the beach. Each sculpture was a labor of love, crafted with precision and care to convey a specific message or emotion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the bustling beachfront transformed into a scene of chaos and terror. Panicked screams echoed through the air as people scrambled for safety, their hearts pounding with fear at the thought of the unseen menace lurking just beneath the surface. It was due to shark attacks that had struck the unsuspecting crowd with ferocity, and it sent shockwaves rippling through its tight-knit community, leaving devastation in their wake. What had once been a vibrant hub of artistic creativity had now become a battleground, its azure waters stained with the blood of the innocent and the unwary. The International Sand Art Festival, which had drawn skilled artists from across the globe to showcase their talents on the sandy shores of Odisha, came to an abrupt halt as the first reports of the attacks filtered through the crowd. Hundreds of people, who had gathered to cheer on the artists as they worked and littered the water with their musical instruments, got their joyful melodies replaced by the panicked cries of those fleeing for their lives. In the midst of the chaos, Sheriff Daniel Hayes emerged as a beacon of hope in the darkness. His weathered face was a testament to the countless battles he had fought and won in service to his community. With grim determination etched into his steely gaze, Sheriff Hayes took charge of the situation, marshaling his deputies and coordinating the town's response to the crisis. Yet, even as Sheriff Hayes and his team worked tirelessly to restore order to the troubled waters, they were confronted by a new threat, a web of political intrigue and bureaucracy threatening to undermine their efforts at every turn. The town council, eager to preserve the fragile veneer of prosperity upon which Odisha depended, exerted relentless pressure on the sheriff to quell the rising fear that threatened to engulf the town. But Sheriff Hayes refused to be swayed by the machinations of the powerful few, his unwavering commitment to justice driving him forward in the face of adversity. With the support of his dedicated team of deputies, he delved deeper into the heart of darkness that lurked beneath the tranquil surface of the bay, determined to uncover the truth behind the rash of attacks and bring those responsible to justice. And then, finally, a breakthrough. Sheriff Daniel Hayes teamed up with Sarah Bennett, a marine biologist, to embark on the perilous journey. Together, they combed the length and breadth of Odisha, their resolve unshaken by the chaos and despair that had gripped the once tranquil community. Their quest for truth led them down a twisting path fraught with danger and deception, as they sought to unravel the sinister forces conspiring to unleash chaos upon their town. From the sun-kissed beaches to the shadowy back alleys, they pursued every lead with relentless determination. As days turned into weeks, Sheriff Hayes and Sarah uncovered a shocking revelation that sent shockwaves of disbelief reverberating through the town. It appeared that the recent spate of shark attacks was not merely a random act of nature, but rather the sinister consequence of illegal fishing practices perpetrated by unscrupulous individuals seeking to profit from the bountiful riches of the sea. The evidence they uncovered painted a damning picture of greed and corruption, as they pieced together the intricate web of deceit that had allowed these illegal activities to flourish unchecked. With each new revelation, their resolve grew more robust, fueled by a burning desire to bring those responsible to justice and restore peace to their troubled waters. Armed with their findings, Sheriff Hayes confronted the town council with the harsh reality of their complicity in the tragic events in the town. With a steely resolve born of righteous indignation, he demanded justice for the innocent lives that had been lost and the sacred trust that had been betrayed. In a dramatic showdown that echoed across the hallowed halls of power, Sheriff Hayes stood tall against the forces of corruption and greed that sought to undermine the very fabric of justice upon which the town stood. With the unwavering support of the townspeople who rallied behind him in a display of solidarity that echoed the spirit of unity that had sustained their community through countless trials and tribulations, he emerged victorious against all odds. The town council, faced with the irrefutable evidence of their wrongdoing, had no choice but to yield to the demands of justice. Those responsible for the illegal fishing practices were brought to account for their crimes, facing stiff penalties and sanctions for their actions. But the victory came at a cost, as the scars of the tragedy that had befallen the town would take time to heal. Yet in the aftermath of the crisis, a newfound sense of unity and purpose emerged as the people of Odisha came together to rebuild their community more robust and resilient than ever before. The morning sun glistened off the crystal blue waters of El Porto Beach, as Mark and his 12-year-old son Tyler carried their surfboards toward the shoreline. It was a warm summer Saturday, and the beach was already crowded with families looking to enjoy the perfect surf conditions. As Mark helped Tyler strap on his leash, he spotted a woman named Jen paddling her green kayak just past the breaking waves. He'd often noticed the pretty blonde around the beach and marina. An avid kayaker and marine enthusiast, she typically kept to herself. After going over some last-minute surfing tips, Mark and Tyler charged into the water side by side, powering their way through the waves until they could paddle out back. The waves were running 4-6 feet, perfect for Mark to continue teaching his son. About 200 yards offshore, Jen floated peacefully in her kayak, occasionally dunking her face mask into the water to glimpse at the underwater scenery. She spied a few harmless leopard sharks gliding along the sandy bottom, and felt completely at ease. Tyler faced some initial difficulties, but with determination, he gradually mastered the timing for paddling and rising to his feet on the surfboard. Mark, observing Tyler's progress, expressed his pride and encouragement as Tyler successfully caught his first wave of the day, gliding smoothly toward the shore. Unknown to the surfers and kayakers, a massive 16-foot great white shark lurked beneath the surface, drawn by the commotion and splashing. With its beady black eyes fixated and its sleek white belly slicing through the water, the predator honed in on its unsuspecting prey. Mark sat calmly on his board, letting a few waves go by as he waited for a good set to ride in. Just then, a gray blur began rapidly overtaking him from the rear. Tyler had paddled back out and was cheering when suddenly, without warning, the great white's gaping jaw clamped around the back half of Mark's body, crunching through bone and sinew as easily as scissors through cotton. A thick crimson cloud immediately choked his agonizing scream as the shark's serrated teeth tore him in half. Tyler wailed hysterically, frozen in shock and horror as the thrashing shark tossed Mark's mutilated torso through the air like a chew toy. Within seconds, the reddening water kept frothing as the great white shook its head violently side to side, swallowing the remains. Jen stared in disbelief towards the sound of the anguished screaming, just in time to see the ominous slick of blood and butchered human remains spreading out from the feeding frenzy. Before she could process what was happening, the great white had spotted her flailing arms from its initial attack and rapidly beelined towards her next. Powering forward with incredible speed, the massive shark launched its entire body over the surface. Its jaw was wide open as it crashed down upon Jen's kayak, shattering it to pieces with its immense weight and strength. The force of the impact knocked Jen underwater, stunned but still conscious, just as the shark spun around to finish her off. A cloud of red drifted through the water as Jen squeezed her eyes shut, feeling the excruciating snap of her legs being torn from her body. She immediately began choking on her own blood, gurgling helplessly as the great white thrashed and spun through the kill, shredding flesh and bone until little remained of her lower body. As the metallic taste saturated her mouth, she forced her eyes open in time to see the shark's cold black eyes staring into hers for a final chilling moment before it bit down through her torso, mercifully sending her into permanent darkness. On the surface, the sounds of joyful laughter and crashing waves were suddenly drowned by the piercing screams of the beachgoers. finally realizing what was transpiring offshore. Tyler was beside himself, shrieking uncontrollably through choked sobs for his father, amid the chaos of hundreds of people desperately rushing out of the bloodied ocean. The great white sensed the fresh rush of thrashing activity and pivoted toward its next target. Already well fed from the gruesome double kill but now aggressively hunting, it sliced through the water straight for the panicking crowd. At the shoreline, parents shielded their children and lifeguards blew shrill whistles toward the remaining surfers, swimmers, and kayakers to exit the water immediately. But the backpedaling frenzy of people ultimately attracted the great white-like swirling chum in the water. The tightly clustered circle of flailing legs and churning water proved an irresistible target for the ancient predator as it torpedoed a group of surfers trying frantically to escape. With a huge spray of water exploding into the air, the bloodthirsty shark emerged, maws open wide, devouring one unlucky surfer in a swift, deadly motion. Pieces of surfboards, flesh, and bones rained across the waves as the rest of the surfers managed to make it back to the beach, along with all the other petrified swimmers and ocean enthusiasts. The churning red waters and the ultimate disappearance of the satiated shark did little to slow the sounds of crying, screaming, and sheer terror that had overtaken the scene. Over the next few days, the shocking attack resulting in 3 fatalities drew worldwide news coverage. Theories abounded about what could have triggered such an unprecedented bloodbath from a great white in a heavily populated area. Heated debates popped up about measures to prevent future attacks, including culling of local shark populations. Throughout it all, local marine biologist Danny Crowder felt torn over the senseless loss of life, but knew the importance of calmly educating the public on the very rare odds of such an attack and the nature of sharks, who primarily avoided interactions with humans. As gut-wrenching as it was, she worried that a panicked, knee-jerk response could ultimately harm the ecosystem sharks helped maintain balance within. So Danny took to the media outlets with sympathy for the victims and loved ones, but with a firm stance that the great white attack was an anomaly of nature, not an indiscriminate rampage to be avenged. She advocated for strategies of prevention, detection, and public awareness, instead of protecting vulnerable beach areas, and for shark mitigation only as a last resort. The visceral images of the attack were certain to haunt the community, but Danny hoped measured responses could keep both humans and sharks in the ocean safely. With clarity and respect for the tragic yet natural events that had unfolded at El Porto, hopefully, calmer minds would ultimately prevail, while still ensuring proper precautions to minimize potential risks of future attacks. The early morning light shimmered on the Pacific Ocean, turning the waves off Maui's northern coast into molten gold. 5 surfers bobbed on their boards, waiting for the perfect set. It was January 10th, 2005, and the thrill of an early swell had pulled them out of bed hours ago. Among them was Kai, a Hawaiian native who'd grown up riding these waves. Surfing was his religion, the ocean his sanctuary. His days revolved around the tide charts, and nothing beat the rush of dropping into a glassy barrel. Today, he was joined by his best friend, Jake, a mainland transplant with an infectious enthusiasm for all things surf-related. Emily, Jake's girlfriend, was just a little behind in skill. Her competitive spirit pushed her to try boulder maneuvers. Rounding out the crew were 2 seasoned local surfers, Tomas and Makoa, whose deep-set eyes scanned the horizon with the quiet alertness of men intimately familiar with the sea's unpredictable moods. The morning started with laughter and friendly competition. They took turns riding the waves, whooping in appreciation of each other's skills. There was a camaraderie among surfers, a bond forged in the shared understanding of nature's power. But the ocean was a fickle beast, and its beauty could mask hidden dangers. Great white sharks weren't common in these waters, but weren't unheard of either. Attracted by warmer currents and abundant food sources, these apex predators were known to roam the vast Pacific. And today, one had found its way to this seemingly idyllic surf spot. Kai was the first to sense something was wrong. A shift in the current, a ripple of unease that washed over him with the chill of a sudden drop in temperature. He saw the other surfers fall silent, their easy banter replaced by a shared wariness. Then there it was. a massive dorsal fin slicing through the water, cutting an ominous course directly towards their little group. Their carefree morning was shattered in an instant. Kai's survival instincts, honed by years spent in the ocean, kicked in. He paddled frantically toward shore, yelling at the others to do the same. Every fiber of his being screamed that escape was their only chance. Emily and Jake followed without question, adrenaline propelling their frantic strokes. But Thomas and Makoa, perhaps out of bravado or disbelief, hesitated. It was a decision that would change everything. The great white surged forward with breathtaking speed, breaching the surface in an explosion of water. Its target was Thomas, frozen in the path of the oncoming predator. Makoa, with a desperate shout, flung himself towards his friend, shoving him out of harm's way with seconds to spare. But the shark, disoriented by the sudden change of target, wheeled back, its massive jaws finding their mark. Makoa's scream cut through the air, followed by a sickening gurgle as he was dragged underwater. The ocean churned crimson, the sight a brutal reminder of the shark's power. Tomas, still reeling from his narrow escape, thrashed towards the safety of the shore, a primal terror spurring him on. Meanwhile, Kai, Emily, and Jake had made it halfway across the treacherous stretch of open water, separating them from the beach. They paddled in unison, hearts pounding in their chests. Their board seemed pitifully small now against the ocean's vastness, and their escape route felt impossibly long. The shark, having consumed its gruesome meal, was still hungry. It honed in on the fleeing surfers, a relentless hunter unwilling to relinquish its prey. Kai knew their only hope lay in reaching shallower water, where the shark's maneuverability would be limited. He urged the others on, his voice hoarse with fear and exertion. Then Emily made a fatal mistake. Panic overtaking her, she abandoned her steady paddling and started kicking wildly. The frantic movements drew the shark's attention like a beacon. It changed course, homing in on her with terrifying speed. Jake watched in horror as the massive shape shot up from below. In a horrifying display of raw power, the shark breached, snatching Emily from her surfboard. She vanished in a flurry of white water, her agonized scream piercing the air before it was brutally cut off. Jake was overwhelmed by a gut-wrenching mix of grief and terror, causing him to freeze. His surfboard became a lone target in the hunting grounds. Kai, however, snapped back to survival mode. With a surge of adrenaline, he paddled toward Jake, shouting at him to snap out of his daze. Reaching his friend, Kai physically propelled Jake's board towards the shore, knowing every second counted. As though disoriented by witnessing two attacks in quick succession, the shark hesitated. Yet the smell of blood and its insatiable hunger kept it circling. Kai and Jake were agonizingly close to shore, but the shark was between them and safety. In a desperate gamble, Kai jumped off his board, sacrificing himself as a distraction. He kicked wildly, creating as much chaos as possible, hoping to draw the predator's attention. It worked. The shark veered towards Kai, its massive form a monstrous silhouette in the churning water. Miraculously, Kai managed to dive under just before the gigantic jaws snapped shut. Feeling the turbulence and blinded by its fury, the shark thrashed. It was enough. Fueled by the terror of losing another friend, Jake reached the shallows. He scrambled onto the sand, collapsing with a mixture of sobs and relieved gasps for air. Kai was still caught in the deadly game out in the deeper water. The shark charged again, and again he dodged. He knew he couldn't outlast the predator forever. His muscles burned, and his lungs screamed for oxygen. Just when all hope seemed lost, a powerful wave broke over them, churning and disoriented the shark long enough for Kai to catch the receding current and body surf his way frantically to shore. He stumbled onto the beach, seconds ahead of the frustrated shark, and crumpled beside Jake. The two men huddled together, shaking uncontrollably as they stared in numb horror at the ocean. The playful waves that had beckoned them that morning now seemed menacing, forever tainted by the bloodshed they had witnessed. With the arrival of rescue boats, the reality of their ordeal sank in. They had survived, but at a terrible cost. From that day on, the ocean would hold a different meaning for them, its power tinged with a respect born of profound fear. For they had looked into the abyss, into the cold eyes of a predator, and they knew the fragility of human life in the face of nature's untamed might. The crystal-clear waters surrounding Petit St. Vincent Island shimmered with brilliant turquoise hues, as the Caribbean sun glinted across the surface. Below, an intricate labyrinth of vibrant coral reefs and submerged rock formations provided an oasis of life for the abundant tropical fish darting through the vivid crevices. Despite growing up amid the stunning natural scenery, 16-year-old Jesse was always eager to explore the island's submarine wonderland, whenever he could strap on his mask, snorkel, and fins. On this particular morning, he grabbed his spear gun as well in hopes of cleanly capturing a few fish for an upcoming family cookout. After paddling his small boat towards one of the shallower reef flats, Jesse secured the anchor and slipped beneath the waves, exhaling a stream of bubbles as he submerged into the liquid otherworld. Beneath him, fans of neon sponges and delicate anemones swayed in the gentle currents, while schools of iridescent fish scattered from the intrusion. Making his way through the maze of brain coral and twisted elkhorn, Jesse's eyes locked onto a plump spadefish casually grazing along a protruding ledge. He carefully drew back the elastic band of his spear gun, sighting the fish before squeezing the trigger and releasing the metal shaft with a heavy thunk of compressed air. The spear rocketed towards its target, striking home and sending up a cloudy stream of bubbles and fragments as the impaled spadefish thrashed wildly before going still. Jesse allowed the frenzied white cloud to dissipate before propelling himself forward in pursuit of the impaled fish, hoping to cause minimal damage. Completely focused on the blood trail bubbling from the motionless spadefish, Jesse's senses became intensely honed on retrieving his prize. So much so that his peripheral vision completely missed the massive shadowy figure emerging from the depths until it was nearly too late. Without warning, a 12-foot bull shark materialized like a torpedo directly beneath Jesse as he hovered over the stilled spadefish. The normally solitary and placid shark had been drawn to the eruption of activity from the spearfishing and activated into a predatory frenzy from the billowing cloud of fishy blood and viscera. Jesse had only a split second to register the oncoming wall of gnashing teeth before the shark slammed into his body from below, carrying him back several feet as its animalistic jaws clamped around his torso in a vice. The unimaginable pain of 1,000 serrated fangs effortlessly slicing through skin, fat and muscle radiated through Jesse's body as he reflexively gulped a lungful of seawater. The nightmarish tornado of bubbles and blood ribbons completely obscured his vision as the thrashing shark began violently whipping its head side to side in an attempt to rip its prey apart. He could feel multiple ribs snap like twigs from the vicious sawing as every jagged row of teeth cleaved deeper into his body cavity. At one point, Jesse's mask was torn from his face as the serrated teeth split his cheeks from jaw to nose, shredding flesh away up to the bone. He instantly squeezed his remaining good eye shut against the searing saltwater torrent now flooding his shredded face, as his other orbit dangled limp in a mess of optic nerves and vitreous fluid. Despite the explosive violence racking his body, Jesse managed to keep his wits and weighted buoyancy belt secure enough to avoid being dragged away into the oblivion of open waters. Still, the creature's relentless ferocity showed no sign of waning as it battered him about like a rag doll caught in a poacher's snare, imprisoning him within its impervious cone of death. As a frigid numbness began to overtake his fading consciousness, Jesse managed to kick free one final time before involuntarily blacking out, enabling him to shoot backward directly into the razor-sharp branches of the reef. He helplessly slammed into the jagged coral at full velocity as the lifeless weight of his body crashed down atop the calcified blades and fractures. Though the impact knocked the wind from his remaining lung, Jesse's limp body tumbled safely back towards the shallows as the frustrated shark lost interest and disappeared into the depths, forced to tolerate the inedible scraps forfeited during the ambush. By the time he was pulled ashore by the first responders summoned from screams carrying across the beach, Jesse had nearly been drained entirely of his life's blood. His tattered form clung to the final threads of viability, riddled with lacerations, punctures, and compound fractures stemming from the shark's relentless assault, followed by the excruciating collisions with the reef. Faced with the gruesome disfigurement, the emergency physicians had to take drastic measures to stabilize his plummeting vital signs. Jesse's savaged right eye required complete enucleation, while his ruined abdomen necessitated removing the damaged portions of his liver and intestines that had been shredded beyond salvaging. The extensive reconstructive efforts to reattach his face and jaw left him forever scarred, but ultimately successful in preventing his demise. After months of excruciating recovery, rehabilitation, and therapy, Jesse was eventually able to return to a semblance of normal life. Though the haunting memories of his violent underwater ordeal would leave him both physically and psychologically changed forever. He is no longer able to take the casual joys of fishing, swimming, or even his appearance for granted. The entire experience prompted the kind of profound perspective shift that often follows a terrifyingly close brush with death. What initially manifested as a post-traumatic aversion to the ocean gradually evolved into a deeply empathetic appreciation and protectiveness for the reasons behind the shark's primordial behavior. You see, in the years preceding Jesse's encounter, overfishing of the region's marine resources had sparked an ecological imbalance with devastating repercussions for the island's shark populations. Facing dwindling food supply from depleted fish stocks, the powerful predators were forced into scavenging closer to the coastline for any available food sources, including those being actively pursued by human spearfishers. With this renewed sense of purpose, Jesse committed himself to the cause of restoring sustainable fisheries and healthy marine ecosystems to ensure the island's sharks could return to their rightful place in the offshore food chain. Through extensive collaboration between local conservation groups, governments, and the communities directly impacted, a multi-pronged plan was established. Though the scars and missing pieces Jesse carried would forever represent a permanent reminder of that fateful day underwater, he took immense pride in having helped facilitate a collaborative solution to restore the balance between species. Because the path forward required understanding and compromise on both sides of the delicate marine symbiosis, not adversarial retaliation or misguided culling. As for the spadefish, it too was rescued from the coral where it remained pierced and given new life swimming among a revitalized reef ecosystem. The golden rays of the morning sun danced upon the azure waves of Lighthouse Beach, casting a mesmerizing glow upon the crystalline waters. For Jack, a seasoned surfer whose very essence seemed intertwined with the rhythm of the ocean, this was paradise. With each stroke of his arm, his board sliced through the water with practiced precision, a testament to years spent mastering the art of wave riding. As Jack paddled out, his senses heightened, attuned to the subtle shifts in the ocean's mood. Though the waves beckoned with their siren call, there was an underlying awareness, a primal instinct that whispered of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. Lighthouse Beach was renowned not only for its breathtaking beauty and epic waves, but also for the ever-present threat of sharks that prowled its depths, a fact often overlooked amidst the allure of its pristine shores. Yet, for Jack and his fellow surfers, the allure of the waves eclipsed any shadow of fear. With each crest and trough, they danced upon the water's surface, defying gravity and embracing the raw power of the sea. And so, on this sun-kissed morning, Jack found himself immersed in the timeless ritual of wave riding, his heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of the ocean. As he positioned himself to catch a perfect wave, anticipation coursed through his veins. The world around him seemed to fade away, replaced by the singular focus of the moment, the exhilarating rush of riding nature's fury. With a swift motion, he propelled himself forward, his body becoming one with the wave as it carried him effortlessly toward the shore. For a fleeting moment, Jack felt invincible, his spirit soaring amidst the foam and spray. But then, as if summoned by some unseen force, a sense of unease crept into his consciousness. It was subtle at first, a nagging feeling that something was amiss, a whisper of danger amidst the euphoria of the moment. And then, with a suddenness that seemed to defy comprehension, the tranquility of the morning was shattered. From the depths below, a dark shadow emerged, its form obscured by the churning waters. Jack's world was upended. Jack's blink of an eye as he found himself face to face with the very embodiment of his deepest fears, a shark. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as Jack grappled with the reality of the situation. Instinct and adrenaline surged through his veins, propelling him into action even as panic threatened to consume him. With a desperate hunger, he fought against the primal urge to flee, knowing that any sudden movement could spell disaster. Before Jack could react, the beast lunged with savage intent, its jaws closing around him with bone-crushing force. In an instant, Paradise gave way to agony as the shark's teeth tore through his surfboard to his flesh, leaving him helpless in the grip of the ocean's apex predator. The shock of the attack reverberated through Jack's body, each excruciating moment etched into his consciousness with searing clarity. He screamed in anguish, the sound lost amidst the roar of the waves, and the churning of the water turned crimson by his blood. Yet even amid unimaginable pain, Jack refused to surrender to despair. With a courage born of desperation, he fought against the relentless onslaught, grappling with the beast in a primal struggle for survival. Meanwhile, the once serene waters erupted into chaos as more sharks converged on the scene, drawn by the scent of blood and the promise of an easy meal. The air filled with the tang of fear and adrenaline as Jack's fellow surfers paddled frantically away from the unfolding horror, their hearts pounding with terror and determination. But amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged, a lifeline in the form of vigilant lifeguards, alerted to the unfolding tragedy by the frantic shouts of the surfers. With swift precision, they sprang into action, their training guiding their movements as they raced to save one of their own. As they reached Jack, the full extent of the horror became apparent. His leg mangled beyond recognition, his pale form trembling with shock and pain. He clung to consciousness with grim determination, even as the jaws of death loomed ever closer. He refused to yield. With steely resolve, the lifeguards intervened swiftly and decisively as they fought to pry Jack from the predator's jaws. With a final burst of effort, they succeeded, hoisting him onto a rescue board and swiftly sending the shark back into the depths from whence it came. Back on the shore, a crowd had gathered, their faces etched with worry and disbelief as they witnessed the harrowing drama unfolding before them. Among them stood Jack's friends and associates, their hearts heavy with fear and uncertainty as they awaited his fate. Jack's condition was dire, his life hanging in the balance as he was airlifted to a specialist hospital for urgent treatment. The loss of blood had left him teetering on the brink of death, his body weakened by the relentless assault of the shark's jaws. Upon examination, the extent of the damage became painfully clear. His left leg was so mangled that amputation was deemed necessary to prevent further complications. As Jack underwent surgery to remove the shattered remnants of his limb, the beach where the attack had occurred remained closed to the public. Authorities launched a thorough investigation into the incident, determined to uncover the circumstances that had led to such a devastating encounter. Photographs from the scene painted a haunting picture of the aftermath. Jack's blue and white surfboard, its bottom ripped off, bearing the unmistakable imprint of the shark's lethal embrace. Based on the size of the bite marks, experts estimated the predator to be between 3.8 to 4.2 meters in length, a formidable creature capable of inflicting catastrophic harm. For Jack, the road to recovery would be long and arduous, marked by countless hours of rehabilitation and adjustment to life with a prosthetic limb. Several weeks later, Jack emerged from the shadow of tragedy, his spirit unbroken despite the physical toll of the encounter. With a prosthetic attached to his remaining leg, he took his first tentative steps towards a new beginning, determined to reclaim the life that had been momentarily snatched away. The Andaman Sea shimmered beneath them as the small boat sputtered towards a speck of green on the horizon. A group of 5 friends seeking adventure off the beaten path had chartered this less than reliable vessel and its weathered captain for the day. It was March 21st, 2009, and their Thailand vacation was about to take an unforgettable turn. At the helm of this motley crew was Luca, a seasoned traveler and outdoor enthusiast with a knack for finding hidden gems. Always up for a challenge, he'd convinced his friends to ditch the crowded resorts for this day trip to Koh Mani, a tiny uninhabited island that locals whispered about with a mix of awe and caution. With promises of deserted beaches and untouched coral reefs, he'd painted a picture of paradise. Naomi, his girlfriend, was a passionate photographer, always seeking that perfect shot. Then came Drake and Pamela, a British couple on their honeymoon, who'd struck up a friendship with Luca and Naomi while exploring Phuket's bustling markets. And finally, there was Andrea Ahrens, a marine biologist whose infectious enthusiasm about the ocean world had sparked their interest in this trip. Their morning had been idyllic. After a bumpy ride, they'd reached the island to find it lived up to its reputation. The beach was a crescent of pristine sand, the water dazzlingly clear. They'd spent hours swimming, building sandcastles with childlike glee and taking endless photos. Andrea had meticulously documented the colorful marine life while snorkeling on the reef, his face alight with discovery. It was early afternoon when Luca made a suggestion. He'd spotted a series of narrow inlets winding through the island's dense interior, like veins of turquoise water disappearing into the green. Curiosity piqued, and the friends agreed to explore. They clambered back on the creaky boat, venturing into the labyrinth. The further they went, the more the atmosphere changed. The mangroves closed in, their tangled roots obscuring the sunlight. The air grew heavy, almost stifling. At the helm, Luca had to navigate increasingly narrow passages, wincing with each scrape against the unforgiving vegetation. Then Andrea spotted something unsettling. Shapes flickered beneath the boat, darting in and out of the murky depths. Sharks. Luca had read that bull sharks were known to frequent these waters, drawn by the abundance of fish in the mangroves. Yet the thrill of discovery had outweighed caution. Seeing the powerful silhouettes circling their tiny vessel, their excitement turned to unease. The sense of foreboding grew heavier as they navigated the mangrove maze. Luca killed the engine, the sputtering replaced by an ominous silence broken only by the dripping of water and their increasingly anxious breathing. The sharks, seemingly sensing their vulnerability, grew bolder. One huge bull shark bumped the hull, sending a tremor through the boat. Panic crackled in the air, the friends huddling closer for a semblance of safety. Suddenly the boat lurched violently, throwing them off balance. The bull shark had rammed the side, its jaws snapping open in an unsuccessful attempt to overturn their craft. Terror fueled their movements as they frantically righted the boat, their hearts pounding against their ribs. Realization dawned: they were trapped. These channels were too shallow for the sharks to attack fully, but their retreat was cut off. It was a matter of time before the sharks' persistence or their carelessness led to disaster. Luca kicked the engine back to life, hoping to power through the dwindling waterway and reach a more comprehensive section where they might have a chance. The boat lurched forward, then ground to a halt, wedged against an unseen submerged root. They were stuck. Before they could react, the bull shark seized their opportunity. With a jarring impact, one slammed into the stern, cracking the fiberglass. Water rushed in, and the boat started to listen sickeningly. There was no time for deliberation. Luca yelled to abandon the ship, and they scrambled into the murky depths. Mangrove roots snagged at their clothes, threatening to entrap them. But the terror of the circling sharks propelled them further into the underwater labyrinth. Emerging into a slightly larger clearing, they gasped for breath. Drake pulled Pamela, a weak swimmer, onto a cluster of exposed roots while the rest treaded water. They scanned the channels desperately, but the boat had sunk, leaving no trace of their presence. Despair washed over them. They were isolated in this predator-infested maze. Luca, battling rising panic, tried to reason through their options. Swimming back towards the open ocean was a death sentence. He forced his mind to focus, drawing on all his survival knowledge. If they could reach higher ground in the island's interior, they could signal a passing boat or at least gain a better vantage point. The water around them churned ominously. The bull sharks, thwarted of their sinking feast, continued to patrol the channels. They moved as a group, keeping a vigilant watch below and above, and pressed deeper into the mangrove tangle. Luck, fleeting as it was, seemed to guide them. Stumbling upon a narrow, muddy slope, they scrambled up onto drier ground. Ahead, a densely forested hill rose, their only chance. Just as they were about to lose faith, a distant sputtering noise broke through the sound of the waves. A boat, an old rusted fishing vessel, was approaching the island, perhaps drawn by the faint wisps of smoke still spiraling from their pathetic fire. Frantically they fed the flames, the smoke growing thicker. From their vantage point in the trees, Andrea and Pamela waved their arms, their shouts mere whispers swallowed by the breeze. The boat seemed to hesitate, then change direction. It was coming towards their beach. Miraculously, the fishermen had spotted them. Within minutes, stern but kind faces were helping them into the boat, providing water and rough blankets. The ordeal was finally over. They had cheated death. The voyage back to the mainland was a blur of exhaustion and relief. But with each passing hour, the island of Koh Mani grew smaller on the horizon, a fading nightmare edged with the bittersweet taste of survival. As the bustling port came into view, signaling the return to civilization, they exchanged weary, knowing smiles. They'd faced the abyss and emerged unbroken, forever bonded by their shared trauma. The ocean would never again be a place of carefree joy. It was now tinged with respect, fear, and the bittersweet knowledge that nature's beauty masks a brutal struggle for existence.